Hey guys, Fredchuck Dave, playing some Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I'm just doing something dumb for funsies while I talk about the game for a second. And then I'll put like an actual fight at the end of the video. That's kind of interesting without commentary. And I guess I'll explain why it's interesting before I do the transition, but in any case. Oh, everybody's got Enfeeblement on. That's the thing. And it's also on Classic. So the goal is fight Abzu as a toad. Or with 3 toes. And see how it goes. And it even has a tutorial for Classic mode, which is interesting. I'm not sure that the toads actually control any different on Classic versus normal. It's kind of hard to tell. But in any case, my thoughts on FF7 Remake. It's definitely the best JRPG since Valkyrie Profile 2. Valkyrie Profile 2, one of the best games of all time. So that means it's a pretty damn good game. And for this year, it's probably the game, because everything else got delayed forever. There was slated to be like 3 or 4 more good games this year. I don't think... I think Cyberpunk is the only one that had a chance of being better than this. And I'd give it like a 50-50 chance of being better, which would mean Cyberpunk is like a top 5 game of all time, just like The Witcher 3. But since all those games are delayed forever, this is the game that we got. And it's a pretty amazing game. Soundtrack, there's like, I think more than 150 tracks in this game. A lot of them are remixes of the original's tracks. And a lot of them are a lot better than the original soundtrack. There's a couple of exceptions, like Cosmo Canyon, which is great in this game, but it's an all-time classic in the first game. Final Fantasy VII soundtrack is very hit or miss. It's not like amazing, but the remake soundtrack is really something else, really incredible, and in kind of the same way that Nier's soundtrack would be incredible, where they're remixing, though instead of remixing something new, they're remixing something ancient. If you look at Tifa, she's got her harness on and a skirt, and the toad follows her color palette. It's probably the most detailed of all the toads. Cloud's just got a Braver, or the Buster Sword. Doesn't have any materia in it, I don't think. And Aerith has a pink ribbon. Oh boy. But the color scheme doesn't really mind you for it all. Barrett's toad is like bigger. That's about... It's bigger and it's got like a wristband. It doesn't have a gun arm, just a wristband that looks like a gun arm, sort of. It's like a frog with a bangle. And we've got leapfrogs. Oh boy. My general thoughts on the game are it's basically Final Fantasy XIII, except in the context of FF7, and with everything lovingly done, like almost perfectly throughout until the ending. The ending is basically just, hey, we wanted to put the final 3 bosses from the first game in this game, so here you go. So there's Sephiroth, there's Genova, and there's Sephiroth. And the Sephiroth fight is immensely better than the Sephiroth fight in the original game, which is just not a very good fight. I realized people were 8 or whatever when they played it. I was 11. So maybe they don't have the best memory of it, but it's a really easy fight. And I don't think it's a particularly hard fight in this, but it's interesting at least. It never gets to be as hard as Final Fantasy XIII, which is an extremely difficult game if you don't over-level. One of the hardest JRPGs of all time, with the ridiculous skill ceiling. I still think the skill ceiling, especially with Tifa and Parry, as evidenced by the end of this video, is super, super high. But it's not necessary. You don't necessarily need to. You don't even need to play Tifa in the hard fights for starters. You could just play without Tifa in the party in the VR fights, and she's still pretty good if you're not playing her optimally. Whereas in 13, you kind of do have to play pretty perfect if you're playing with a weak party at all to do anything. The later 13s are a lot easier though, so maybe this is closer to those difficulty levels. So mild difficulty concerns, I guess, but I don't really think that's all that necessary. Also, I am extremely good at JRPGs. Even before I was good at other games, I was always good at JRPGs, so my opinion on JRPGs is going to be skewed pretty weirdly. This seems to be going pretty well. Frog's too strong for Abzu on Classic. It didn't go as well the first time I recorded this, but mostly I didn't talk very well. So I don't think the ending is basically saying, hey, we can do whatever we want with the plot. And because spoilers, FF7's plot in Midgar is pretty good. And then once you get out of Midgar, it starts being real dumb. The original game. In fact, it makes basically no sense whatsoever. And Aeris is a pretty good character in Midgar, and then she's kind of a trash character after that. Tifa is a great character throughout. Cloud is a good character until he's trash. And every other character in the game, except for the ones that are kind of underdeveloped, like Yuffie and Vincent, and Kate Sith, those characters kind of suck. But every other character is awesome. Baron said, some of the best characters of all time. Tifa, one of the best female characters. But the plot is trash. If you look at Sephiroth in this game, he's pretty close to regular Sephiroth. I guess he didn't have a voice, so he was better because he didn't have a voice in the older game. But actually not that good of a villain. He looks cool, he's got a big ass sword, he kills that dragon in one hit. That's pretty cool. Nibelheim boys. But a lot of the childhood nostalgia stuff about FF7 is just wrong. So they're basically saying, hey, what if we did it? So it has a lot of the same plot points, but we can do what we want to make it better. That seems fine by me. Go for it. Sure, boys. Have fun. Frogs can use items, by the way, which I think is inconsistent across the series. Some frogs can use items, sometimes you can't. Let's throw in a big bomber. It missed. No. Disaster. My guys have reprieve, so don't worry. They'll be fine if they got one hit. Plus, I guess I could just use an elixir or something. So, I like the ending. I really like the motor baller fight. That's pretty cool. And I like almost every tiny detail about the game that I remember. I skipped school to play Final Fantasy VII when I got it from the library when I was like 11. This is 1999, and I was playing Final Fantasy VIII at the same time eventually. And I beat them both like almost simultaneously, so I like swapped between the two while playing them, which is kind of cool. That sounds like something I would do now, but not necessarily something I would do when I was younger. But I was being creative at the time, I guess. Apart from that, the end of the video is going to be a Coliseum fight that I had with Tifa, where I went in totally unprepared, no healing, didn't have the right elements equipped, and I still won. because of the skill ceiling with Tifa that I was talking about earlier, which is totally absurd. Like you can parry cancel basically every attack that doesn't leave her airborne, and you could parry circle strafe certain bosses like the behemoths, for example, or Abzu. Probably works on Abzu too. And they just can't hit you because you're too fast. It's pretty cool. And apart from that, I'm gonna put up that Cosmo Canyon music. I don't know if I talked about that here. But I think Final Fantasy VII's original soundtrack is not that great. There's like 4 or 5 really awesome songs, and then the rest of them are just pretty good or bad. Like the Gold Saucer, just bad. Gold Saucer in this isn't too bad, but Gold Saucer original, that shit is cancer. But there you go, frogs. Frogs are triumphant. Doubt not the might of the frogs. this is just going to transition into the next part of the video where I'm not talking. Hope you enjoyed me blabbing for a second. I'll probably re-listen to this to make sure I didn't sound too dumb or too incoherent. Probably sounded fine, as always. And farewell, friends. Enjoy.
Over yet. Hope you're ready. Didn't need to be so messy.